Right, this is then part 2 of this application, the second video. Now for the second video, I want to go to, let's go to the resources layout folder, and we go to the activity maps XML. So if you look at the design, it will basically not show you a very nice design there because we are using a segment there. So if we go to the text, it's easier to work in text. What I want to do is to have in front of my map, or just before showing my map, I want to show a button where the user can send his location. So I'm going to use a linear layout as my root layout, and then I'm going to use all of these XMLs and all of those statements there. I'm going to paste them there, and we can remove them then here. Okay, and then I'm going to add the Android, let's say layout width, which is required, and the width which will just match the parent. Then we'll also have the layout height also required, and I'm also going to say match the parent there. And then I also need an orientation, and the orientation should be vertical. And then we can end off, let me just end it like that, and that's then your linear layout. So I'm going to copy this fragment, or cut the fragment there, and place it then inside of my linear layout. Okay, so now we'll have something like this. If you look at your component tree there, we've got a linear layout as the base layout, and then we've got the fragment called map. Okay, so there's the linear layout. See, we don't use this one, so that would be all that we need. Okay, so that's basically your layout. And then what I want to do now is to go and drag in to this linear layout. I want to go and drag in an image button. So for the image button to work, we actually need an image. So let's just go and create an image from going to resources, new, and we're going to use a vector asset there. So the vector asset, let's go to icon, and we choose under communication. I'm just going to use this location type of button there, and say OK, and let's call it location, and say next and finish, and you can see it's now under your drawable. And now the nice thing about this is you can change the color of that specific picture if you use a vector asset. Okay, so now what I want to do is to drag in an image button. So I'm going to drag in the image button. I can't really see what's going on. Let's drag it into the linear layout, and then it's going to ask me what is the picture you want to use. So I'm going to search for it there. There's the location picture, and you can see there's an image button now just before my map component, and you can see it there in your picture as well. You can see there's my button first, and then I will have my fragment. So we could also change this button now if we click on it to set the background also the same as my other buttons. So it looks like that with the round corners, but probably you'll do something else here. But I'm just going to use that one. So that's my button. When the user then clicks on it, I'm going to have this one as image button send, which will send his location. So when we run this, we will first see the image button. You can just change that to Android source. And we can have this image button then first, and then we show the fragment. Right, so let's go to the maps activity. And in the maps activity, you see some auto-generated code. The maps activity extends the fragment activity. You can also extend app compat activity, which will also work fine. So I'm going to do that. Let's just use app compat activity there. And it implements the onMapReady callback. So this is an interface that when your map fragment is you can see there, support fragment, map fragment equals get support fragment manager, find the fragment by its ID, and the fragment is called map. So if you look at our layout file for this activity, you will see that the fragment there is called map. So we're basically linking to that fragment, and then on that fragment we call get map async. So then it prepares the map for you, and the onMapReady callback will then call onMapReady as soon as the map, after calling get map async. Why can I pass in this there? Because this get map async is using the onMapReady callback, and this class of ours is a onMapReady callback. So we can just pass in this there. And then when it's done syncing the map, it goes to onMapReady, and you can start using the map. So this is just some auto-generated code, and we're going to change the code as we go along. So I just want to add a few variables here at the top. So the first one I want to add there, let's say private location manager of Android.location, and I'm going to call it location manager as well. Then I want to have a private string provider, and that provider will basically tell me, am I using the GPS or am I using the course location to triangulate between towers, or what am I using there? So we're going to get back to that one later on. And then I want to set up some initial latitude and longitude. So I'm going to call this one a double, let's just call it lat for the latitude. And I'm going to start with the minus 29.118349. So the easiest way is to go to Google online on the web page and go to Google Maps and place your marker on the screen and get a latitude and longitude that you want to start with on this activity. Okay, and then I'm going to define the longitude as well, and the longitude will be 26.22492. Okay, so I'm just setting up coordinates, the latitude and the longitude that I'm going to use later on. Then also we're going to use that image button that we created. Remember, on your layout there's an image button, and the image button is called IB send. So let's use IB send there as well. So that's the image button. We'll set up the image button now. Then I'm going to use a Boolean variable also. Maybe let's put all of these together. I'm going to use a Boolean variable, and this Boolean variable I'm going to call is existing point. And I'm going to set this one to false, and you'll see where we're going to use that later on to see if there is a point that's currently existed. And then we're going to use a geopoint. Now make sure this geopoint is from com.backendless.geo. So we're using the backendless library there, and we're going to call this one an existing point. Okay, and we're going to use that one also later on. And then when we retrieve all our geopoints from backendless, we need to just have a reference to those. So we're going to have a list of all the geopoints that's on backendless, and that's why we're going to use the list there, or the array list. Okay, so now the next part that we want to do is to get the location basically of the user. So in order to do that, we're going to use this location manager that we defined at the top, and I'm going to say location manager, and we're just going to cast this to a location manager as well. And we're going to call get system service, and the system service that you want to call is in the context class. So you're going to say context.location service. Okay, so that's the location service that we want to make a connection to, and then we can start getting what is the last known location of the user and so forth. So we're going to use the location manager to help us do that. So we need to create a criteria for this specific object, or for this location manager. So I'm going to say criteria equals new criteria. And you can go and read a bit more about this criteria object, because I'm just going to leave it as empty, but you can set up some criteria here on which provider you want. Do you want the GPS, or do you want what? So you can set up this criteria object later on. And then I'm going to set the provider there that we declared at the top will be the location manager object now that's got a connection to the location service, and we're going to call get for me the best provider. And now I'm going to pass in that criteria object, and then for the next argument I'm just going to pass in false there. So this will basically then get me the best provider, returns the name of the provider that best meets the given criteria. So I haven't given criteria, so it's going to give me the provider in this sequence. First the power requirement, then according to accuracy, then bearing, then speed, then altitude. Okay, so it's going to give me the best provider, and that is then obviously the GPS, or is it just using the signal, or what is it using? Okay, so that's getting me the best provider, and I'm saving that specific provider. Now I'm going to do the following. We're going to say location, and that's Android.location. Let's call it location as well, equals the location manager dot get the last known location for me. So I need to get the last known location by using this provider that we just got. So it's going to be the GPS or the just a triangulation of the towers or whatever to get the last known location of the user. Well, the user of the phone, that is. So the last known location that your phone has got will get returned by the last known location. So you'll see that it gives me a problem there because we need to ask permission to do this. So let's just quickly go to the main activity, and you remember that we had this if statement with the else there that checks for the permission. So we're going to go to the maps activity again, and I'm going to paste that there. So let's just paste there and say OK for all the imports. And then I'm going to remove that part there. Main activity should become now the maps activity dot this, and then in the else part I'm going to paste this part. So I'm going to cut it there and I'm going to paste it there. So I'm first going to check if the permission course location and find location has not been granted. I ask permission for it first, but if it has been granted, whereas in our case it should be granted now, if we get to the maps activity, we can get the last known location of the user. Now another thing that we need to use there in this else there is to go also and add another implements here. So we're going to implement another interface, and the if interface is going to be called location listener of android.location, and this one needs a few methods. So if you click on it and say Alt Enter and say implement the methods, you can just say OK there and it implements all the methods for us. And the one method that I really want to look at is the onLocationChanged method. So we're going to look at that one now. So the first thing I want to do then, inside of this else, we've got the last known location of the user now. Then I'm going to test if this location, this last known location, is not equal to null, which means that we have a last known location. Then we're going to call that onLocationChanged method that's part of the interface. We will call it and we're going to pass in this location. Okay, so then let's go to the onLocationChanged method, which is this one, and see what we can do there. So in this onLocationChanged, I'm going to set my latitude that I defined at the top. Remember, I just gave it some values there at the top, but I'm going to set them now. So every time my location changes, and you'll see later on we're going to set it in another place also, that we can check every 3 minutes or every 50 meters that it has moved, we can call this onLocationChanged again. So every time the location changes, we're going to have this location object. So now in the onCreate, we're forcing that one to run by sending it the last known location. So now if we go to the onLocationChanged method there, this location then will give me some information. So I'm going to say location.getLatitude, that gives me the latitude, and then the other was long, I think, and that's going to be location.getLongitude. So then we can set those two variables, and then we just test if this map object of ours, so remember, as soon as your map is ready, it sends through this Google map and we've got a reference to the map. So now I'm testing if the map is ready. If it's not equal to null, there's a map already that we can use, because basically when we call this getMapAsync, and by the time that we call onLocationChanged, it could be that the map is not ready yet. So if the map is not ready yet and we try to set something to the map, we're going to get problems. So that's why we just test if the map is not equal to null, which means the map is ready, then we can set the location on the map. So then we're going to create a new latitude, longitude, basically just a position on the map. Call it position equals new lat long, and we're going to pass in, you can see there, two doubles. The first one is the latitude, the second one is the longitude. Okay, so that's a new position. Now on the map, let's call mmap dot, we can add the marker now on the map for the last known location of the user. So as soon as the application starts, we get the last known location, we call onLocationChanged, and then we will set that marker of the last known location now to the map. So we're going to say new marker options, and then I'm going to go down to the next line and I'm going to add an icon now. So before I add the icon, let me just go and add a new picture. So you can choose your own picture for the user to see where he is on the map currently. So I've downloaded a picture Let me just see if I can open it up quickly. So it's a picture of a person. It looks like this. So I'm going to use this picture. So download your own picture online, and then we'll add it now to our Android application. So you're going to go to Resources, New, Image Asset, and you're going to say Image there. I'm going to call this one, let's call it Person, and I'm going to browse for it, and this one is on my desktop. So let's go to Users, go to my desktop, and there's the person.png. So it looks like this, and I'm going to go down and set it to none, so I can just see the person. It is a PNG transparent type of picture, this one, and I'm going to say next and say finish. Okay, so that's the person I want to use. So it's going to be under the mipmap folder, and it's called person.png. So on this markers now, or this marker options, I'm going to call .icon to set a new icon for this one, and I'm going to use the bitmap descriptor factory dot from resource, and the resource is r.mipmap.person. That's the picture I want to show. Then where I'm going to anchor that thing, so I'm going to say anchor again, and then it's passing into float value, so I'm going to say 0.0f to convert it to a float, and a 1.0f for the float as well. And then I'm going to add a title for that thing, for that marker, and the title will be, let's say, your last known location. And then I'm going to add the position there, and the position will be this position that I have there at the top, which is just position, and that will basically add the marker to the screen. So let's just add it off like that. So we've got the map, we add the marker, this is the icon for the marker, we anchor it. This is basically on the left and bottom side of your image, will it be anchored, and then the title will be your last known location, and the position will be this position. But now we're placing the marker on the screen, but we will want to also move the camera to that specific position. So we're going to say move camera, and then we're going to use camera update factory dot new lat long, and we're going to pass in the position. So this is then going to move the camera to that specific position that we've indicated, which is the same position that we placed the marker. Okay, so that is the onLocationChanged method. So when does that one run? Well, we call it there in the onCreate, and we'll also see later on in the onResume, as well as in the onPause. We can, well, in the onResume we'll set a listener for this onLocationChanged. So we'll do that later on. So the onLocationChanged method takes in a location, it gets the latitude and the longitude, checks if the map is not null, set the position, create the marker with a picture if you want to add your own picture there, and then it moves the camera to that position. You can see I'm not zooming in here because we'll do the zoom in now in the onMapReady method. Okay, so let's get to this onMapReady. You can see there the first line there we get the Google map, and that's the same Google map we used here to set the marker. Now what they do here is they set a marker in Sydney there. So what I want to do is I want to set it to my latitude and my longitude. Okay, and I'm going to remove that one there. That's called Sydney, and let's call it position. And then it will be positioned there as well. And it's going to be positioned there also to get rid of the errors there. So I'm going to move it to this specific latitude and longitude that I've defined at the top. Or if the location changed, we've got a new latitude and longitude where it's going to set it to. Okay, so let's remove these two lines, and we add our own lines now there. So I'm going to use mmap again, and I'm going to call move the camera. I'm going to move the camera to a specific point, and we're going to use the camera update factory dot new lat long. But now you can see I'm going to use the zoom there. So I'm not just using new lat long, just move to a new position, but I want to zoom into that position as well. So I'm going to use lat long zoom, and you can see the first one is the point, the position. So I'm going to pass in the position there. And the second argument is the amount that you want to zoom. So let's say 10. We want to zoom into, well, the zoom level should be 10 there. If you make the zoom level bigger, it will be zoomed in more. And if you make it smaller, you'll see a bigger map. Okay, so then on the mmap again, we're going to call animate the camera, so we can see that zoom type of movement there. And we're going to use the camera update factory dot zoom to, and you can see I'm going to use the same zoom level there to animate also zooming to that specific place. Then the animation is going to take 2 seconds, 2000 milliseconds, and then the last argument we're just going to use as null. So that will animate the camera to seems as if it's zooming in, and then it zooms to position, to that zoom position. It's going to take 2 seconds for that animation, and then we've got the camera zoomed in already. So any time that we call on location changed now, you can see I'm not zooming again because we're zooming on map ready. We're zooming into that zoom level already. So from there on, we can just move the camera, unless you want to zoom in here for a different position also, or a different zoom level. So that's basically in the on map ready. We create that position, we zoom into that level, and we also make use of animations to do so. Now, the last thing I want to do in the on map ready is to basically set the my location enabled. Now, in order to do that, you're going to go and say mmap.set my location enabled, and you're going to set it to true. But you'll see that this one also now uses this if statement to check for the permission. So I'm going to copy that whole thing again, and we're going to use it here, paste it. I'm going to delete everything in the else, and I'm going to cut this line and place it there in the else. So we're going to set in the on map ready, we check if the permissions is done, and then we set the my location enabled to true. So that just creates a button on the map where the user can click, and it takes him directly to his location again. So you set my location enabled to true, and then after this, it's not necessary for this one to be in the else there. So we're going to say the map.set the map type, and you can set the map type to what you want. So you can see there's a normal, a hybrid, non-satellite, or terrain map. And I like the hybrid because it's the combination of a normal map with the satellite map. So it's basically a satellite map with street names on it. So I'm going to set my map to map type hybrid. Remember, in the previous video, we used a menu system in order to set the type of the map that you want to display. All right, now the last thing for this video, so we're done with this method. Let's just put the cursor, I'm going to put the cursor there, just after the on location changed. I want you to go to code and override methods. And what I want to do now is to basically use the on pause method. The on pause method. And we also want to have the on resume method. Okay, so it's the on resume and the on pause method. So remember, the on resume method runs basically at the same time as your on create method. So it's at the start of your activity. Also, when your activity, if you leave your activity and you come back to your activity, the on resume will also run again. On pause will run basically just before your activity gets destroyed, or when you're outside of your activity or moving away from your activity, on pause will run. So what are we going to do in the on resume? And that will, remember, on resume runs basically at the same time as your on create. It's right at the beginning of your activity. Also, when you come back to your activity, on resume will run again. So what do we want to do in the on resume? So I'm going to use that same permissions again. Just go back. I want to use this permissions part again. So in the on resume, I'm going to have that one there that asks for the permission again. Now, if there is permission granted in the on resume now, we're going to take that location manager that we referred to. We declared it there at the top, and there we made a connection to the location manager, which is the location service. So on that location manager, we're going to call request location updates. So we're going to, if the activity starts, we request location updates, and there's a few things that we're going to use here. So the first thing I need to pass in is the provider. So we set up the provider at the top. The second argument there is how long should you wait before you update the location of the user again. So I'm going to use here 180,000 milliseconds, which is basically 3 minutes. So it means that every 3 minutes, we're going to request the location of the user. And every time it requests the location of the user, it will go back to on location changed and set the location, and we'll set the new marker again if the location of the user changes. Okay, so that's the provider, the first argument. The second argument is how long you should wait before you do the update. This is 180,000 milliseconds. So it's basically 3 minutes. And then you can also set your number of meters moved. So if I say 50 there, it means that this location will get updated when 3 minutes has passed, or the user has moved more than 50 meters from his current location. And then the last argument, we can just pass in this. So basically, we are requesting location updates every 3 minutes or every 50 meters. Then it will run on location change, get the new location, set the latitude, longitude, add a marker, and move the camera to that position. Okay, so that is basically just requesting the location update. And then in the on pause, we need to release that again. So I'm going to do the same thing. Let me just paste there again. This same if-else structure there to check for the permissions. And then what we're going to do here in the on pause, that's basically when we move away from our activity. So the activity is getting cancelled or sent to the background or whatever. We can just go and say location manager dot remove updates. So we won't update anymore, and we're going to pass in this. So while the user is on this maps activity, it will update the location of the family every the location of the specific user every 3 minutes or every 50 meters used or moved. Otherwise, if you move away from the activity, we will not do the updates anymore. So it depends on what you want to do for your specific example. And that is it then for this video. So we'll go to the next video, which is the last video, and just finish up this application.